The roar of the Istanbul airport was a dull, constant hum, a sound Captain Eva Rostova had learned to tune out. After 6 months flying cargo runs in and out of combat zones, the chaotic symphony of rolling suitcases, garbled announcements, and 1,000 different languages was just background noise. Her entire world had narrowed to 2 things: the worn leather of her combat boots in the gray plastic bin, and the gate number displayed on the departures board. Gate B42. Freedom, home. She watched the bin slide into the dark mouth of the X-ray machine, a final symbolic surrender of her military identity. For the next 12 hours, she would just be Eva, a mom, a daughter, a woman with a paperback novel and a longing for her own bed. She could already feel the weight of her daughter's small arms around her neck, a sensation more precious than any metal. Stepping through the metal detector, she collected her boots, the cool floor a stark contrast to the insulated warmth they usually provided. She was just slinging her carry-on over her shoulder when the world shifted. It started with a ripple through the crowd ahead, a sudden intake of breath that spread like a shockwave. People stumbled back, their chatter dying into startled exclamations. Then the center of the ripple broke through. A man. He moved with a desperate, lurching gait, one hand clamped to his shoulder where his navy blue t-shirt was soaked a grotesque, shiny black with blood. His face was a mask of pale determination, his eyes scanning, searching for something he couldn't find. He didn't make it far. His legs gave way just feet from Eva, his body collapsing onto the polished floor with a heavy, wet sound that silenced everything else. The airport's hum vanished, replaced by the frantic beating of Eva's own heart. For a single, frozen second, she was just a bystander, a horrified witness. Then his head turned. His gaze, clouded with pain and something else, raw urgency, locked onto hers. With a grunt of immense effort, he reached out, his blood-slicked hand closing like a vice around the leather of her ankle. The cold, sticky sensation seeping through her sock broke the spell. He pulled, his strength surprising, dragging her down to his level. The smell of copper and sweat filled her nostrils. She could feel the hard muscle of his forearm, the grit of the floor beneath her knees. Airport security was shouting now, their voices distant, muffled. The man's other hand scrabbled at his belt, and for a terrifying moment, Eva thought he was reaching for a weapon. Instead, his fingers brushed against a set of metal dog tags. He was military. His eyes, a startlingly clear blue despite his agony, bored into hers. He yanked her closer, his lips inches from her ear. His breath was a hot, ragged gasp. "Trap," he rasped. The word was barely audible, a puff of air laden with finality. It wasn't a plea for help. It was a warning. A transmission. And as the word landed in the core of her being, Eva Rostova, the mom on her way home, ceased to exist. In her place stood Captain Rostova, United States Air Force. Her training, a deep-seated instinct forged in years of service and drills, kicked in without a single conscious thought. Her carry-on hit the floor, and her hands were already moving, assessing the wound, applying pressure with the scarf she'd packed for the chilly Pennsylvania evenings. The final boarding call for her flight to freedom was a meaningless echo in a world that had just shrunk. To the space between a bleeding seal and the trap he had warned her about, the world dissolved into a vortex of noise and motion. A woman screamed. A child started crying. The sharp, commanding shouts of Turkish security guards cut through the air, their words foreign, but their intent terrifyingly clear. They were converging, weapons being unholstered, their focus on the armed and bleeding man on the ground, on her. Eva's heart hammered against her ribs, a frantic drumbeat against the chaos. But her hands, resting on the seal's shoulder, were perfectly steady. She watched his eyes, seeing the consciousness flicker within them like a dying light bulb. He was trying to stay present, fighting the shock and blood loss, his gaze darting around the ring of panicked faces looming over them. "U.S. Air Force," she stated, her voice a low, forceful blade slicing through the cacophony. She didn't shout. She projected, putting the full weight of her rank and authority into those 3 words. She locked eyes with the lead guard, a man with a thick mustache and wide, alarmed eyes. "I am a captain, U.S. Air Force. This man is U.S. Navy. We are allies." She slowly, deliberately reached for her own military ID from her back pocket, holding it up like a shield. The guard's eyes flickered from her face to the ID and back to the seal, his weapon still raised, but his posture shifting from aggressive to uncertain. The seal, Miller, groaned, his body tensing. His hand, still gripping her ankle, tightened convulsively. "The watch," he slurred, his voice thick. "Gray suit. Watching the watch." The words were a broken code, but they painted a terrifying picture. Eva's head snapped up, her pilot's instincts for situational awareness kicking into overdrive. She scanned the perimeter of the crowd, past the gawking tourists and the frantic airport staff. And she found him. He stood apart, near a currency exchange kiosk, a portrait of unnerving calm. A man in an impeccably tailored gray suit. He wasn't filming on his phone. He wasn't talking to anyone. He was simply observing, one hand in his pocket, the other casually checking a sleek silver wristwatch. His eyes were not on the blood or the drama. They were fixed on the gate Eva had been heading toward, gate B42. He was a predator assessing why his prey had suddenly changed direction. The lead guard barked an order, gesturing for her to move away. This was the critical moment. If they took Miller, he would be processed, interrogated, and the man in the gray suit would vanish. The trap would be sprung, whatever it was. She made a split-second decision, a gamble based on the absolute conviction in her voice. "He is my assigned military escort," she declared, the lie coming easily, fueled by necessity. "Our convoy was ambushed en route. We must be moved to a secure location immediately. A diplomatic room. Now." She put a hand on Miller's good shoulder, a gesture of possession and protection. "I am not leaving his side." The guard hesitated, his radio crackling with static and frantic questions. He looked at Eva's ID again, at her sharp, unyielding expression, at the clear evidence of a severe gunshot wound. The word diplomatic seemed to resonate. He gave a sharp nod and began barking orders to his men. Two of them moved forward, not to seize Miller, but to carefully lift him onto a gurney that had just arrived. As they hoisted him up, Miller's head lolled toward Eva. His lips were moving, barely a whisper. She leaned in, her ear close to his mouth. His breath was a faint, warm ghost against her skin. "The canister," he breathed. "It's here. In the terminal. They're here for the exchange." Then, his eyes rolled back and the last of his strength left him. The man in the gray suit was gone from the kiosk, vanished into the crowd. But Eva knew. He was still here, and the clock was ticking. The secure room was a stark, windowless box that smelled of stale coffee and industrial cleaner. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead, casting a pale, sickly glow on the pale green walls. They had laid Chief Miller on a formica-topped table, his big frame looking suddenly vulnerable under the harsh light. A Turkish medic was now working on him, cutting away the blood-soaked shirt to reveal the ugly, puckered wound. Eva stood back, her arms crossed tightly over her chest. The scarf she'd used to staunch the blood was a ruined crimson rag on the floor. The lead security guard, who had introduced himself as Altan, was speaking rapidly into his radio, his voice a low, tense murmur. Eva's mind was not on the room. It was replaying the last few minutes in a continuous, high-definition loop. The collapse, the grip on her ankle, the word trap, and the man in the gray suit. His image was burned into her retina. The perfect cut of his jacket, the calm, almost bored expression, the way he had checked his watch. Not a nervous gesture. It was a timing check, a confirmation. He was running on a schedule, and the bleeding seal was an unexpected variable, but not enough to derail his plan. Miller's slurred words echoed in her head. The watch, gray suit, watching the watch. He hadn't just been observing the chaos. He had been using it as a screen, a moment of public distraction to confirm something, or someone. Her eyes darted to the small pile of Miller's personal effects that Altan had placed on a chair. His wallet, a folded map, his dog tags, and a small, black, waterproof cell phone. The phone. That was the key. She needed to get a message out, but not through the local channels. The man in the gray suit had walked through security with impunity. How many eyes did he have inside this airport? How many people were paid to look the other way? She had to assume the local comms were compromised. Her own personal phone felt like a toy, useless against whatever this was. But Miller's phone, that was a direct line to his world, to the people who would understand the code words he had tried to utter. Altan finished his call and turned to her, his expression grim. "Captain, your embassy has been notified. They are sending someone. Until then, you must wait here. It is for your safety." He gestured to the door where 2 armed guards now stood post. "His phone," Eva said, her voice cutting through the sterile air. "I need his phone. I have codes, information from my command. It is a matter of urgent operational security." She layered her voice with the unassailable authority of a military protocol, something she knew a civilian security officer would be hesitant to challenge. Altan's eyes narrowed slightly, suspicion and duty warring in his gaze. "That is evidence. It is a matter of national security for the United States," Eva countered, taking a step forward. She didn't break eye contact. "Lives are at stake, more than just his, more than just mine. You have my cooperation, but I must contact my command. Now." She let the word hang in the air, a silent implication of diplomatic incidents and serious consequences. With a reluctant sigh, Altan nodded toward the chair. Quickly, Eva snatched the black phone. It was locked, of course. But Miller, in his final moments of consciousness, had tried to give her more than just words. His hand had brushed his belt near his tags. She looked at the dog tags. Standard issue. Name, service number, blood type. And then she saw it. Tucked behind the main tag, almost invisible, was a small laminated card with a 6-digit number, a bypass code. Her fingers trembled slightly as she entered it. The screen unlocked. She didn't call a standard number. She opened a secure messaging app and typed a single, predetermined code phrase that she prayed would trigger an immediate response from the right people. The phrase Miller had gasped in the hallway. "Eagle is down. VX is loose in the nest." She hit send. For a moment, nothing. Then 3 dots appeared. A response was coming. The door to the room suddenly opened and a man in an airport manager's suit entered, smiling a thin, professional smile. But his eyes swept the room, lingering a little too long on the phone in Eva's hand. The man in the gray suit had more than just paid-off guards. He had people in management. The trap was not just outside the door. It was already in the room with them. The airport manager's smile was a sterile, practiced thing that didn't reach his cold, assessing eyes. "Captain Rostova," he began, his English precise and unnervingly calm. "I am Mr. Demir. We are handling this situation. The authorities are on their way. You are safe now. If you would please come with me, we can get your statement in a more comfortable office." He gestured toward the open door, where the 2 guards stood like statues. It was a polite command, not a request. His gaze flicked again to the black phone she clutched in her hand. Every instinct in Eva's body screamed in protest. The secure room had felt like a temporary refuge. This man, with his placid authority, felt like the jaws of the trap closing around her. To go with him was to disappear into the airport's bureaucracy, to be delayed, pacified, and neutralized while the man in the gray suit completed his transaction. Miller's warning echoed in her mind. The exchange. She couldn't let them separate her from the seal or the phone. With all due respect. "Mr. Demir," Eva said, her voice layered with a steel she did not feel. "My orders are to remain with Chief Miller until my military police detail arrives. I am the ranking U.S. officer on site, and he is in my custody." She subtly shifted her stance, placing herself physically between the manager and the table where Miller lay. The Turkish medic had paused his work, watching the silent power struggle with wide eyes. Mr. Demir's smile tightened. "This is Turkish soil, Captain. You are a guest here. Our procedures must be followed." He took a step closer, his hand extending slightly, a clear invitation for her to hand over the phone. "We will secure all evidence." The phone vibrated silently in Eva's hand. A single coded message flashed on the screen, a string of letters and numbers that meant nothing to anyone else. But to her, it was a lifeline. It was confirmation. The message was from a call sign, Valkyrie Actual, her own squadron commander back at Incirlik Air Base. It meant they had received her warning, they believed it, and assets were being scrambled. But it also contained a terrifying confirmation, asset confirmed. VX nerve agent, believed in diplomatic pouch. Intercept and isolate. Do not repeat, do not allow local authorities to secure the asset. Compromise likely. Her blood ran cold. VX, a pinprick could kill a man in minutes. A canister could wipe out this entire terminal. And the man who wanted it was here, right now, and the airport's own head of security was likely working for him. Demir was not here to help. He was here to contain them and retrieve the phone. She saw it in the impatient glint in his eye, the way his fingers twitched. I understand this is Turkish soil, Eva replied, her mind racing. She needed a diversion. She needed to buy seconds, and I will comply fully. But first there is a matter of a biological contaminant. She let the words hang in the air, watching their effect. The medic flinched. Altan, the lead guard, stiffened. Demir's smile finally vanished. Chief Miller was exposed to a hazardous material during the ambush. I must insist on a full decontamination protocol for this room before anyone else enters or leaves. It is for your safety, and the safety of everyone in this airport. She was bluffing, throwing out the most terrifying, disruptive scenario she could invent. It was a desperate gamble, but it was the only card she had left. For a moment, no one moved. The word biological hung in the air like a poison cloud. Altan took an involuntary step back from Miller's body. The medic looked down at his gloved hands with sudden horror. Demir's face contorted with a mixture of fury and panic. That is an outrageous claim. Is it? Eva fired back, her voice rising. Then why was a Navy SEAL shot in the shoulder and not the head? They wanted him alive long enough to talk. They wanted to know what he knew about the location of the canister. It's not just a weapon, Mr. Demir. It's here, in your airport. And the man who wants it is the one who just walked through your security checkpoint while you were focused on us. She took a step toward him, her eyes blazing. So you can either help me stop him, or you can explain to the world why you let a nerve gas attack happen on your watch. Your choice. The room fell into a stunned, heavy silence, the authority shifting irrevocably into her hands. The silence in the room was absolute, broken only by the ragged sound of Miller's breathing. The word nerve gas had frozen everyone in place, a spell of pure, undiluted terror. Mr. Demir's face had drained of all color, his professional mask shattered. He was no longer a manager containing a problem. He was a man realizing he was standing at the epicenter of a cataclysm. Altan and the other guards had their weapons half raised, but their aim was unsteady, their eyes darting around the sterile room as if the very air had turned toxic. Eva didn't wait for their paralysis to break. She used the precious seconds of shock to her advantage. You! She snapped at the medic, her voice a crack of command. Seal that wound. I need him stable and I need him mobile. Use whatever you have. The medic jolted into action, began frantically rummaging in his kit for a compression bandage. She then turned to Altan. Your men secure this hallway. No one in or out without my direct authorization. That includes him. She pointed a finger at Demir, whose mouth opened and closed soundlessly. The phone vibrated again in her hand. Another message from Valkyrie Actual? This one contained a photograph, grainy from being enlarged. It was the man in the gray suit, taken from what looked like an airport security camera. The text below was stark. Identity confirmed. KGB legacy asset, call sign, architect. Specializes in WMD procurement. Believed to be using a diplomatic pouch, immunity, flight BA-042, departing gate B-42. Intercept is authorized. Extreme prejudice. Gate B-42, her gate. The flight she was supposed to be on. A cold fury settled over Eva, burning away the last traces of fear. This architect had not just invaded her airport. He had invaded her path home, turning her moment of peace into a battlefield. He was a ghost from her grandfather's stories. A monster from the Cold War that refused to die, and he was about to walk onto a plane with a weapon that could kill thousands. We don't have time for decontamination, Eva said, her voice low and urgent, speaking directly to Altan. She showed him the phone, the photo of the architect. This man is here, right now. He has the canister. He is heading for a British Airways flight at gate B-42. He is using a diplomatic pouch. Your scanners will ignore it. Your people will wave him through. She saw the conflict in Altan's eyes, duty, fear, and a dawning horror at the scope of the betrayal within his own organization. Demir found his voice, a reedy, panicked whisper. "This is insanity! You cannot prove any of this! You are causing a panic!" Eva ignored him, her focus entirely on Altan. "You are a security officer. Your job is to protect the people in this terminal. Right now, I am the only person here who knows what this man looks like, who knows his target, and who has the authority to stop him. My command has authorized me. Now I am asking you, help me, or get out of my way." Altan stared at her, his jaw working. He looked at the pale, bleeding American on the table. He looked at his superior, Demir, who was now sweating profusely. He looked back at Eva, at the absolute, unshakable certainty in her eyes. He made his choice. He barked an order to his 2 men in Turkish. They immediately moved to block the door, their weapons now held with purpose, their stance making it clear that Mr. Demir was not to leave. "The architect is moving," Eva said, grabbing Miller's dog tags and the secure phone and shoving them into her pockets. "He saw us get brought in here. He knows his timeline is compromised. He'll accelerate. I need to get to that gate." Altan gave a sharp nod, pulling out his own radio. "I will clear a path. I will tell them you are a doctor responding to a medical emergency on the concourse. It will get you through the checkpoints." It was a thin cover, but it was something. Eva nodded her thanks, her mind already racing ahead, plotting the fastest route through the bustling terminal, a hunter once more stepping onto the trail of her prey. The door to the secure room clicked shut behind her, sealing away the stifling tension. The concourse stretched before her, a river of oblivious humanity flowing under the bright commercial lights. For a moment, Eva stood perfectly still, her heart thundering in her chest. Altan's voice crackled from a small walkie-talkie he had pressed into her hand. "The path is clear to Concourse B, go." The spell broke. She started to move, not with a panicked run, but with a swift, purposeful stride that ate up the polished floor. Her combat boots, once a symbol of a journey ending, were now the tools of the hunt. Altan's ruse worked. At the first security checkpoint, a guard waved her through with a grim nod, muttering "Doctor" into his own radio. She was a blur of motion, her eyes scanning the crowd, searching for a glimpse of a gray suit, a silver watch, a head of neatly styled hair. The faces around her were a smear of laughter, boredom, and exhaustion. A child pointed at a plane out the panoramic windows. A couple argued over a map. The normalcy of it was a surreal counterpoint to the mission screaming in her mind. These people were buying perfume and electronics, completely unaware that a specter of death was moving among them. She pushed past a group of slow-moving tourists, her focus narrowing on the signs for Gate B42. It was at the very end of the concourse. Then she saw him. A flash of gray wool near a newsstand about 100 yards ahead. The architect. He was moving with a controlled, brisk pace, a sleek silver diplomatic case now chained to his left wrist. He didn't look back. He didn't need to. He was a man on the final approach to his objective, his confidence a palpable force. He believed he had already won. Eva increased her pace, her breath coming in short, controlled gasps. She couldn't tackle him here, not in the middle of a crowd, not with that case. The walkie-talkie squawked. It was Altan, his voice tight. "He has bypassed the final security point for the gate." He showed credentials. "They are letting him through. He is boarding." Boarding. The word was a spike of ice in her gut. Once he was on that plane, it was over. He would be untouchable, protected by diplomatic immunity and the sealed environment of the aircraft. The canister would be in the cargo hold, a ticking time bomb on a transcontinental flight. She broke into a full sprint, no longer caring about drawing attention. People gasped and stumbled out of her way. She was a force of nature, a storm in human form, her gaze locked on the back of the man who threatened to obliterate the world she knew. The architect reached the jet bridge door. A flight attendant stood there, smiling, checking his boarding pass. He handed it over with a smooth, practiced motion. He was steps away from vanishing. Eva was still 50 feet back, closing the distance, but not fast enough. "Stop him!" she yelled, her voice raw and commanding, cutting through the terminal's murmur. The flight attendant looked up, startled. The architect turned, and for the first time, their eyes met. There was no panic in his gaze, only a flicker of cold, analytical annoyance, as if she were a minor software glitch. He stepped into the jet bridge, the attendant moving to close the door behind him. It was over. He had made it, but then a loud, piercing electronic shriek split the air. The fire alarm. Altan had come through. The effect was instantaneous and absolute. The calm atmosphere of the gate area shattered into pure, unadulterated panic. The flight attendant's professional smile vanished, replaced by terror. The door to the jet bridge on an automatic safety protocol began to slide shut, but the architect, caught off guard for a single crucial second, was forced to step back into the concourse to avoid being trapped in the tunnel. He was out. He was back in her world. And now he was looking directly at Captain Eva Rostova, who stood poised and ready, the chaotic, screaming crowd becoming her battlefield. The world became a vortex of screaming and flashing red lights. The architect stood isolated in the eye of the storm, his calm finally fractured. His eyes, sharp with a killer's intelligence, locked onto Ava. He understood now. She was not a glitch. She was the opposing force. The silver case was a stark, accusing presence on his wrist. He didn't run. He simply turned and began to walk, not toward an exit, but toward a discreet service door marked baggage handling, authorized personnel only. He moved with purpose, knowing she would follow. This was no longer an escape. It was an invitation to a more private killing ground. Ava plunged after him, shoving through the disoriented crowd. She hit the service door just as it was swinging shut, the heavy metal cool against her palm. The noise of the alarm became muffled, replaced by the deep mechanical hum of conveyor belts and the distant beeping of a baggage tractor. The air was cool and smelled of diesel and rubber. It was a cavernous space, a labyrinth of towering shelves stacked with luggage and snaking metal tracks carrying a river of suitcases into the darkness. The architect was already 20 yards ahead, moving between the shelves with the familiarity of a man who had studied the blueprints. He stopped, turning to face her, his free hand slipping inside his jacket. "You have been a significant inconvenience, Captain," he called out, his voice echoing slightly in the vast space. He pulled out a pistol fitted with a long, menacing silencer. Eva didn't flinch. She dropped into a crouch behind a pallet of mail sacks. "The case, architect. It's over. The whole airport knows your face." He let out a soft, humorless laugh. "They know a face. They will find a body. A disgraced American pilot, killed in a botched attempt at espionage. A tragic end to a tragic story." He raised the weapon. The first shot was a soft phut, the round tearing into the mail sack just above her head, spraying shredded paper. Eva was already moving, low and fast, using the conveyor system for cover. She was a pilot, not a door kicker, but every airman learned basic combatives. Her mind was a tactical computer calculating angles and cover. He was a professional assassin. She was a problem solver. She just had to solve him. She saw her opportunity a few yards away, a maintenance cart with a heavy steel wrench lying on its seat. Another silenced shot ricocheted off the metal track near her feet. He was advancing, methodically cutting off her avenues of retreat. She made a dash for the cart, the wrench cold and solid in her hand. He rounded the corner, his weapon coming up, but Ava wasn't there to meet him. She had dropped and rolled under the conveyor belt, coming up on his flank. As he turned, surprised by her sudden displacement, she swung the wrench with all her strength. It wasn't aimed at him. It was aimed at the chain connecting the case to his wrist. The steel links sparked on impact, the force of the blow jarring his entire arm. The case clattered to the concrete floor. A roar of pure rage escaped him. He fired again, wildly this time, the bullet whining as it ricocheted into the ceiling. He lunged for the case, but Ava was faster. She kicked it, sending it skittering across the floor and under a low-hanging conveyor. He turned on her, his face a mask of cold fury, the gun coming up to point directly at her chest. There was no cover, no time. In that frozen second, Ava saw her daughter's face. It gave her not peace, but a final, desperate surge of strength. As his finger tightened on the trigger, she threw the wrench not at him, but at a large red emergency stop button on a nearby control panel. The button slammed inward. With a great groaning shudder, Every conveyor belt in the vicinity ground to a sudden, violent halt. The silence was deafening. The distraction was a fraction of a second, but it was enough. She dove forward inside the arc of his weapon, driving her shoulder into his midsection. They crashed to the hard floor together. The silenced pistol skittered away into the darkness. The fight was brutal and silent, a grim ballet of desperation versus trained lethality. He was stronger, his moves precise and deadly. But Ava fought with the ferocity of a mother protecting her child, every blow fueled by the image of the silver case and the death it contained. She used her elbows, her knees, her forehead. She found the bullet wound in Miller's shoulder and remembered the cold calculation in this man's eyes. With a final guttural cry, she wrapped her hands around the wrench still lying nearby and brought the heavy end down on his knee. The sound of shattering bone was sickeningly loud. His body went rigid. A strangled scream caught in his throat, and then he collapsed, unconscious. Panting, bleeding from a cut on her lip, Eva crawled to the silver case. She pulled it into her lap, holding it tight. The cold metal a testament to the war she had just won in the echoing silence of the baggage hall. The first to arrive were not the Turkish authorities, but a team of 4 serious-faced men and 1 woman in dark, unmarked tactical gear. They moved into the baggage area with a quiet, professional lethality that made the airport security look like amateurs. They ignored the groaning form of the architect, swiftly and efficiently securing him with plastic ties. The leader, a man with a close-cropped beard and calm eyes, knelt beside Ava. She was still sitting on the concrete floor, the cold weight of the diplomatic case a heavy anchor in her lap. Her hands were trembling, and she could taste the coppery tang of blood in her mouth. "Captain Rostova," the man said, his voice low and steady. "I'm Johnson. We're with the agency. Valkyrie Actual sent us." He didn't try to take the case from her. He simply placed a hand on her shoulder, a grounding human touch. "The asset is secure. The terminal is being evacuated. You did it, Captain. It's over." Eva looked from his face to the silver case. The reality of what it contained, the unimaginable death sealed within its sleek shell, finally crashed down upon her. A shudder racked her body. These men, this agency team, they were the cleanup crew for a disaster the world would never know had almost happened. They helped her to her feet, her legs feeling weak and foreign. One of them carefully, reverently, took possession of the case, placing it inside a thick, lead-lined container. The aftermath was a blur of muted activity and hushed debriefings in a different, more secure room. A stern-faced woman from the U.S. Embassy used phrases like diplomatic incident and plausible deniability. They were grateful, profoundly so, but it was a gratitude that demanded silence. The official story would be a chemical spill scare, a triggered fire alarm, and the arrest of a fugitive arms dealer. The names Captain Eva Rostova and Chief Miller would appear in no reports. Their heroism was a state secret, buried in the shadows where it belonged. Weeks later, the memory of Istanbul felt like a fever dream. The familiar surroundings of a stateside military base were a balm. The air smelled of cut grass and jet fuel, not fear and disinfectant. She stood at attention in her dress blues, the fabric stiff and formal against her skin. The sun was warm on her face. Before her, a Navy admiral, his own chest a constellation of medals, spoke into a microphone. His voice echoed across the parade ground, filled with words like exceptional valor, unwavering duty, and service far beyond the call. But Ava heard them as if from a great distance. The admiral pinned the Distinguished Service Medal on her chest. The weight of the gold and enamel was insignificant compared to the weight of that silver case. He shook her hand, his grip firm, his eyes holding a knowing respect that went beyond the ceremony. The crowd, a sea of uniformed personnel and their families, applauded. The sound was a wave of approval, of recognition. Her eyes, however, never stayed on the admiral for long. They kept drifting to the front row. There, standing beside her proud, tearful parents, was her daughter. The little girl was wearing a small, star-spangled dress, her hair tied with red, white, and blue ribbons. She wasn't fidgeting. She wasn't looking around. Her entire world was focused on her mother, standing tall and brave under the flag. As Ava's gaze met hers, her daughter gave a small, solemn, perfectly executed salute. In that moment, the echoes of gunfire, the smell of blood, the cold terror of the hunt, it all receded. The applause faded. The medal on her chest was a symbol, but the love and safety reflected in her daughter's eyes, the profound peace of knowing she had secured that future with her own 2 hands, that was the true reward. She had gone to war in an airport terminal, and she had come home a hero, not to the world, but to the only audience that would ever truly matter.